The Vikings are the biggest underdog in the league this week, so how can they pull off the upset? I brought in Locked On Seahawks to see if we can figure it out. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, 12s and Vikings fans. You're listening to the latest Crossover Thursday edition here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. He's Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. Got a big matchup coming up on Sunday at Lumen Field. Seahawks hosting the Vikings. This is a game that's been circled on the calendar really since the schedules came out in May, with a certain quarterback now playing under center for the Seahawks that lit it up for the Vikings a year ago. Minnesota's missing him quite a bit so far this season with the way things have gone. We're going to be talking about that quarterback situation for both teams. We've got key matchups. We've got keys to victory. You name it. Everything you need to know about Seahawks Vikings coming up here on Crossover Thursday, which is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDINNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, Luke, last time that you and I talked, it was actually after the Seahawks had signed Sam Darnold in free agency, and you reached out to me and you were more than happy to break down what Sam Darnold was going to bring to Seattle's offense as the new starting quarterback. The expectation was J.J. McCarthy was going to come in and have a lot of success this year for Kevin O'Connell, and yet here we are now going into this Week 13 game, the one that has been circled since May. And look, Sam Darnold can say whatever he wants. You know, he's had this date at least internally circled for himself as well coming into this game. But Minnesota dealing with injuries at quarterback and now J.J. McCarthy in concussion protocol. What are the vibes right now under center for the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, the whole building is in total crisis, right? I think everybody right now in Minnesota, I think the primary thought is, am I going to be here next year? Whether you're a player or a staff member. And I think that's kind of what the rest of this season is becoming is a little bit, every man just needs to kind of prove their worth to this franchise so that they're not ousted at the end. This season has totally gone belly up, and I don't think anybody has delusions of, playoff seeding. I don't think we're looking at in the hunt graphics. But there was a lot there. So I guess for one, I was right when I came on your show and talked to your fans about Sam Darnold. So you're welcome. Told you you just had to let him do his thing. You just had to let him go crazy. You had to just embrace the insanity of Sam Darnold, and he would lead you to success. And look at that. You're a top 5 team. In Minnesota, obviously, with how badly J.J. McCarthy is playing, you're asking all kinds of existential questions about the organization, right? All the way up to the top, all the way down to the last guy, to the equipment manager, right? But that's probably a moot point in this game because of the concussion. Kevin O'Connell said on the podium that they don't really expect McCarthy to play. He was limited in practice, which is a pretty good sign, but he said that they don't expect him to play. He's not going to take all the reps all practice. It's probably going to be undrafted rookie Max Brosmer, who we don't know a lot about. We saw him in a couple of preseason games, but as well as I do, there's not a lot you can take from that. So this is going to be, late round or undrafted rookie first start against a punishing defense. I'm going to be honest. If this isn't a blowout, the Seahawks should be disappointed. The spread at FanDuel is 11.5, and it should be.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it because, Seahawks fans over the years have become accustomed, at least when Pete Carroll was the head coach, there was kind of this running joke that, if you were a backup quarterback or you were an undrafted rookie going up against the Seahawks, oh no, the opponent's got the Seahawks right where they want it.
I mean, you don't have any tape on them, so
yeah, that's true. And Mike McDonald was talking about that today. That look, we're going to have to go back to the preseason and watch tape. We're going to have to talk to our scouts in the building that scouted Max Brosmer at Minnesota, and so that can create a little bit of advantage when you don't have the regular season tape on a player. Not a guy that's known for the athleticism as much as J.J. McCarthy was coming out of Michigan either. So they're different style quarterbacks that the Seahawks are going to have to try to prepare for with limited things to prepare for him with. on the flip side, as you mentioned, the Vikings, they know the quarterback on the other sideline as well as anybody with what Sam Darnold did last year. And I think that is so fascinating going into this game. Sam Darnold going up against his former team and a defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, who knows him extremely well. And he said it earlier this week. You know, we loved Sam, but
we're going to blitz him. Yep.
They're going to be ready to bring the pressure, turn up the heat on him. And I'm just so fascinated to see how this plays out, Luke, because until the Rams game 2 weeks ago, Sam Darnold had been pretty dang good against the blitz all year, and he was good against it this last week.
I think I said that exact same sentence last year.
He played really well against the blitz. It was just that Rams game where he had the 4 interceptions. And just give credit to the Rams. They put him in some tough spots. Then he made some decisions he hasn't been making this year for the most part. So I'm just curious, you know, who has the advantage when you're talking about a quarterback that's cerebral like Sam Darnold? Like, look, I've faced your defense in practice. I know what you do, Brian Flores. Or Brian Flores like, hey, I know what you do, Sam Darnold. I know what your weaknesses are. That really is a fun chess match to look at going into this game.
You know, it is. And I think if you caught this like 5 or 6 weeks ago, I would have been really interested in kind of Flores and his plans. And of course, he's going to come up with some interesting thing. But this team has been bad, man. Like, I don't know how much it matters. They can't stop the run. I don't think Darnold has to do a lot in this game because they can't stop the run. And I know the Seahawks like to run, despite their reputation as this explosive, deep passing team, which they also do. But I kind of think that Seattle can just line up and say, we're bigger, we're stronger, we're going to punch you in the mouth and get a lot. I mean, I think just about every game has like a drive where you'll see, you know, 6 first downs in a row in primarily the ground, and suddenly you're in the red zone. But for what I understand about Sam Darnold, and I think this is still true, even though I've kind of been only watching from afar now this year, is if you give him a deep downfield opportunity, he's going to go for it, which means he's going to take risks, and maybe you can try to punish those. But really, the way that you attack Sam Darnold is with interior pressure. That's how the Rams did it in the 2 games against the Vikings last year. That's how the Lions did it in the 2 games that he struggled against the Vikings last year. There are other games. I remember the Jaguars got a lot of kind of pressure and forced Sam Darnold into one of those 4 interception meltdown games. And that is, if there's one thing that the Vikings have been able to do, it is get pressure up the middle. Jalen Redmond, who's not a household name, but should be, is playing like a top 10 defensive tackle in this league right now. Total unknown name, breakout story, one of the only bright spots of the season. He's second on the team in pressures right now. As an interior guy that has been like rotating out a lot. And not to mention, you know, they've been really good at these like cross dog blitzes and getting linebackers up the A gap and beating the running back in pass protection. They've been great at that too. So if there is hope for the Vikings to stop this explosive offense from just gnashing it down the field, it would be interior pressure and then hoping Sam Darnold can make some mistakes, get some turnovers. And you know as well as I do, an 11-point spread disappears really quick when you start turning the ball over. I think that has to be the path for victory. But like in Minnesota, for Seahawks fans, I think you need to know this. I think the consensus is we deserve this spanking right now. Like we deserve to get smoked because there's all kinds of seller's remorse with letting Darnold out the building. They offered him a 1-year deal. The Seahawks offered him more security. He took that. And that decision is much maligned, looks horrific in hindsight as Sam Darnold's in the MVP conversation again. And the Vikings can't get their young quarterback to put one foot in front of the other. So there is this huge remorse. And then you head into Seattle and it's like, yeah, this 40 burger is going to feel pretty appropriate. This is going to feel like the Vikings are experiencing a justice that they deserve. But maybe that's exactly the kind of thing where you walk in and subvert some expectations. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you mentioned with the run game stuff because early this year, and I'd say the first 8 to 10 games, the Seahawks were one of the least efficient rushing teams in the NFL. But that has really changed the last 3 weeks. They have jumped into the top 10 in the last 3 games in almost every category. This is the first time this year they've had 3 straight 100-yard rushing games. Ken Walker III seems to have rediscovered his mojo. Zach Charbonnet's that thunder lightning package with Walker now. And the offensive line has gotten together, and Gray Zabel's been a big part of that. You talk about a tough son of a gun. It looked like his season might be over 2 weeks ago. I'm going to play the next week anyway, and played at a really high level against Jeffrey Simmons. So Seattle might be looking at the tape saying, you know what, this is a game we could take another step forward running the football, we feel like, against this Vikings defense and take some of that pressure off of Sam Darnold, make it tougher for them to really get after him. So just so much left for us to talk about here away from just the quarterback position. And it's a perfect segue to the key matchups. We'll be diving into that next year. Crossover Thursday, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Vikings. This episode is brought your way by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get into the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel's got live bets on everything from who will score next to those crazy fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push, trying to force overtime or pull off a late win. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. You're listening to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Vikings. I'm Corbett Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. He's Luke Braun, host of the Locked On Vikings podcast. We've got the Sam Darnold revenge game coming up on Sunday afternoon at Lumen Field. And I know that when this game was released on the schedule, Luke, that everybody was looking at it like Vikings ascending contender, J.J. McCarthy. They think they got the team around him for this team to rattle off double-digit wins and be right in the mix. And, who knows if Seattle is going to be even competitive in the NFC West. But nonetheless, Darnold against his former team, against J.J. McCarthy, the guy the Vikings chose to stick with at quarterback. And it doesn't look like we are going to get the opportunity to see those two go head-to-head in this game. But there are so many compelling matchups to watch in this one. And I want to pick your brain from a Vikings defensive standpoint here, because as you mentioned, this defense has not played very well as of late. They've had their issues defending the run. What matchup scares you the most going into this game, dealing with the Seahawks offense that's a top 5 scoring offense?
Well, so the Vikings have given up explosive plays as much as anybody else in the whole league has, depending on how you define those. I think it's like 15 or 20-yard passes. They give up a lot of those. And I know Darnold loves this throw, the throw over the middle, especially to Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's having the year of years. I think that if the Seahawks can, and let me know if this sounds too difficult for you, if the Seahawks can get Jackson Smith-Njigba into the hole in the zone in the middle of the field, I think he goes for about 350 yards. Can the Seahawks handle that? Is that something that is too difficult or not difficult enough? Just,
look,
put him in the middle and then hit a throw to him.
They've done it a bunch this year. That has been Sam. And here's the other thing that we have to add to this. Look, Rashid Shaheed has 3 catches in the 3 games the Seahawks traded for him. It's not that he's been a non-factor. He's got involved in the running game. He's been really good in kick and punt returns. But
they run a lot of cardio, probably.
Chemistry going yet with him, but there is going to come a game where they've had a couple really close calls these last few weeks on deep balls. There is going to come a time here very soon. Maybe it's this week, maybe it's not. Rashid Shaheed is going to start striking down the middle of the field too. And then opponents are going to be like, what do we do here? And that has not happened yet to this point. But you mentioned those big holes in the middle of the defense. Like Rashid Shaheed is another guy that can absolutely light up those kind of deficiencies in his secondary.
Yeah, and like from what I remember from Shaheed on the Saints, it was a lot of like, that fast guy go ball or the deep post and stuff. And the Vikings will cap a lot of that off. Like this is not that. I mean, they'll maybe bust a coverage every once in a while, and that's a different thing. But they typically will spend a lot of resources, playing over the top of everything and not allowing you that beautiful go ball down the sideline. But where they get killed is that bang 8 to the tight end, or that, basic over the middle, that dig over the middle, that backside dig, or just a slant. And then there's just nobody in front of a guy for 25 yards and they can just like start to cook in the open field and be a yards after the catch guy. That has been killing them, not to mention the scrambling when you've got a quarterback that can do that. Justin Herbert did it on Thursday Night Football. I'm sure a lot of people saw that. So it's really that the Vikings have in the middle of the field, a lot of people make a lot of mistakes. And this has been a problem kind of all of the years that Flores has been here, that the linebackers will widen out too much, or they'll close up too much, or they'll go too deep, or they'll, get caught. They'll have to simulate the pressure, but then they get caught up in the blitzing and they can't get back to their spot fast enough. And then suddenly there's this huge hole in the middle of the field. And they haven't really been willing to change their coverage structures to cover that weakness. So it's just there all the time. And that then serves to sort of undermine all the blitzing. We're going to send guys. Flores is going to send guys. A lot of them are probably going to be going up the middle of the field. They're probably going to run a lot of stunts at Gray's able, test the rookie out, see if he can sort it all out. And that's going to probably lead to some hits, some pressure. Like, guys are going to get in unblocked just by the nature of things. But there's also going to be somebody wide open immediately 15 yards down the field. And I mean, there have even been times Jordan Love hit one last week. He didn't even get to the end of his drop back before he was under pressure, but he still got the ball away because he just back-footed it. And the guy was so wide open, you could afford to miss that thing by a mile and he would still be able to chase it down. So it's been really, really frustrating in that angle. And what's worse, if you want to run it up the gut too, that's also there for kind of different reasons. The defensive tackles have just struggled against the run, with the exception of Jalen Redmond. It's been Javon Hargrave. Sometimes it's Jonathan Allen. It's those more established names that have been kind of, sledded out, like washed out of the club a little bit. And then suddenly there are these huge, huge holes. But what I will say is I've complained about these things probably disproportionately. The defense is still fine. They're far from the problem with the Vikings. And they've been, saddled with some short fields because of a special teams gaffe or a turnover. They've been put in some really disadvantageous situations, and they've risen to the occasion a lot. So like if the Seahawks are under 30, I would say the defense is probably happy. But the offense is never getting there. And that's really going to be where we see an issue.
Yeah, and you know what? I look at the matchups in this game, flipping the script here a little bit, obviously with Minnesota being where they are at right now, with their quarterback injuries and McCarthy not playing in this game. Everybody's going to look on the outside at Justin Jefferson going up against Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen. I feel confident that the Seahawks can at least keep those guys on the outside at bay with the talent that they've got at those cornerback spots. And at the same time, the matchup that concerns me the most in the middle, you mentioned with Jalen Redmond, the way that he's playing, what concerns me a little bit against this Vikings offense and with the way that the Seahawks are playing, I'm just still wondering about getting those tight ends and running backs involved in the passing game, because that has been one area. Even the Titans last week were able to do some things with their running backs and the tight ends in the passing game. They converted several fourth downs doing that. That has been the one thing that when teams have had some success consistently against the Seahawks defense, they've been able to do it. And that's if the pass rush is not getting home quick enough. If the pass rush is getting home, then that becomes a moot point because they don't have the ability to force defenders in coverage to play coverage 4 or 5 seconds, which Cam Ward did several times last week. To his credit, he played a heck of a game. The rookie QB did. Brosmer, that doesn't seem like that's his game, going back and watching the way that he played at Minnesota. But at the same time, if the Vikings can find a way to protect him enough where he is able to get through a few progressions and he's able to use the tight ends and running back some and isn't under immediate duress frequently, Seattle's got the dudes to be able to do it. But if the Vikings offensive line can rise to the occasion, that to me would be the one thing that would concern me a little bit with the Seahawks, especially because they've had some injuries at the safety position and Julian Love isn't back yet.
Yeah, so the Vikings offense has had trouble putting one foot in front of the other. It hasn't been about, are they winning their matchups or whatever. It's been about guys not knowing what they're supposed to do. Bust a protection, right? Let a guy in free, or the quarterback sets his feet up the wrong way. This happened with Wentz and McCarthy, or is, looking at the wrong thing, or just holding the ball forever, right? Kevin O'Connell has this obsession. He cannot help himself, but to call on, 2nd and 8 everyone run a 20-yard route and nothing is breaking off until, 3 seconds into the play with, an extra little motion and like this totally overcomplicated thing. And then it's like an easy sack because the quarterback has to hold the ball for 4 seconds. So like they've had trouble just kind of one elbow figuring out what the other elbow is doing. But what I'll say with Brosmer is I'm going to guess that we get really, really heavy training wheels here, right? Like he's inexperienced. He wasn't really ready to play based on the preseason. He played well. He did what you asked him to do well, but there's still some of like the basics that they're trying to get down, like setting your feet to the throw you're about to make and, how to get to the top of a drop back and then step up, like how to hitch up after a drop back, like some of the really fundamental basics that he was still new to, because of the way that they ran, I think in Minnesota and then at New Hampshire before that, just isn't really the most like preparatory thing for the way that pro offenses work. There's just new stuff you got to learn. Yep. And he's still learning that stuff. So I think like we got to walk before we can run here, before we start going, well, are we going to try to use the tight end over the middle or the receiver on the outside? Like, I just want him to get the ball to anybody right now. But maybe those training wheels would turn into a swing pass to the running back a lot, or, a slow developing middle tight end screen, or trying to hit something over the middle to TJ Hawkinson. Like maybe that does turn into those things. You'll have to tell me about how the Seahawks like to cover. I'm going to guess that this is an offense that doesn't really scare anybody. So you're going to go with whatever your most comfortable staple is. And that would, I think maybe inform me on how the Vikings would try to attack that. But I still think this is very much like an internal, we got to clean up our own house first and figure out just how to execute anything before we can start worrying about what the other guys are doing.
Yeah, and the thing with Mike Macdonald is I feel like this year it has really been more so, we'll see what kind of flavors I feel like eating this week. Like there has not even been there hasn't been a central theme where week in, week out, this is generally the type of coverage. Like lately, they've been leaning more on man because they have been full strength at the cornerback position. They have Devin Witherspoon back healthy, Reed Woolen's healthy, Josh Jobe is healthy. They've got their whole array of corners. Nick Eamon-Wardy is a Terminator in the slot. Like they just have dudes that they can, right? We think he can cover anybody in man, and they've been more willing to do that. And they've been one of the lowest blitzing teams in the league. Now, I wonder, does that change a little bit when you have an undrafted rookie quarterback that's never started an NFL game and you want to see, hey, how does he handle if I send Devin Witherspoon after him or Ernest Jones?
Pull out some of those things you did in Baltimore, because he had a lot of really interesting stuff in Baltimore.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think he would probably do. But regardless, look, I'm going to be doing more data digging on this, but I just feel like this is one of those matchups where Mike Macdonald, he might not be able to help himself a little bit on that regard, just because he wants to really see, hey, man, what's this quarterback bringing to the table? And if he surprises you and he handles some of the stuff early, then you adjust, which Mike Macdonald is as good as anybody at adjusting in game defensively. Did it again a few weeks ago against the Rams, where it looked like the Rams might blow him out after a couple touchdowns, and they pretty much shut him down the rest of the game. That's what Mike Macdonald does. So he's going to be coming in this game trying to maybe see if he can rattle the rook a little bit. And then if he handles those stressors, okay, we'll pivot to another thing. And the Seahawks have a defense that's multifaceted they can do that with. When we come back, we're going to dive into some of the keys to victory. How does Minnesota, with probably an undrafted rookie under center, how does Minnesota pull off the upset? And what does Seattle have to do as the heavy favorite to live up to that favorite status and take care of business against the Vikings? We'll be breaking that all down coming up next here on Crossover Thursday. You're listening to the Crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Vikings. I'm Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. He's Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. A special thanks to all the 12s and Vikings fans who are tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making both Locked On Seahawks and Locked On Vikings your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Luke, we're heading into this big game on Sunday. And obviously for the Vikings, you mentioned it earlier, like, hey, we're not even looking at in the hunt pictures. If they manage to win the game, though, in Seattle and get to 5-7, you can at least say they're on the outskirts, potentially, still have a fighting chance to claw back into that last wild card spot. It feels like even then,
we don't need to.
Maybe that's the most optimistic fan. But
This is a bottom five team.
Game that changes things a little bit for the Minnesota Vikings if they could somehow pull this off, given the injury at quarterback, the issues they've had at quarterback, and offensively in general. When you look at what Minnesota's got to do in this football game, let's start on the defensive side, going up against Sam Darnold, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Ken Walker, and all the weapons the Seahawks have. What do the Vikings have to do to be able to come in and give Max Brosmer and this offense any chance to be able to hang tight and maybe pull off the upset here at Lumen?
Yeah, I think I've said the same answer to this question, I think, on every single one of these crossovers, and I think it has been the deciding factor every time it's a turnover battle. The reason the Vikings are an ugly 4-7, this is a team that could win out and still not make the playoffs. They are dead in the water. They're bottom 5 in a lot of metrics, and I think they're appropriately considered right now a bottom 5 team. I think they're losing more than they're winning going out. And the reason is they cannot protect the football. Carson Wentz, J.J. McCarthy, fumbles, special teams gaffes. They cannot take care of the football. And they've lost the turnover battle, I think, in all but a handful, like 2, I want to say, maybe 3 games. They've lost the turnover battle. And usually it's, 3-0, 2-0. So the defense, for all of the reputation that Brian Flores has, you got to understand, this is not that same unit that you saw last year that was like creating chaos and picking the ball off and jumping routes and playing aggressive. They are keeping everything in front of them. They're going for fumbles a lot on the tackle. So they'll tackle high. They'll go for the peanut punch. But everybody sees that on tape. So everybody practice. You can tell they all emphasize it throughout the week. Hey, high and tight. Don't get that ball punched out. And then suddenly you're tackling high against a guy with really good ball security that turns his legs, and you just get bowled over. Watch Emmanuel Wilson's highlights from the Packers game last week. That dude had to have had 85% of his yards after contact, just churning his legs and moving through guys. So if the Vikings, and they're not going to stop. Brian Flores has already said, we're okay with letting up a couple extra yards. We think it's worth it for the turnovers. But they haven't gotten a turnover since, I want to say, the Lions game, which was 4 weeks ago now. They haven't generated one. They've just missed a bunch of tackles over it. So they have to generate those turnovers, get a fumble, or force Sam Darnold into a mistake with interior pressure like I was talking about earlier in the show. And then they have to protect the ball on the other side, but they haven't been able to do that either. They're throwing bad interceptions. They're, the special teams is going to be good for one absolutely head-scratching gaffe a game. Something will happen on this special teams that's going to be like when Caleb Johnson, let the football go over and you guys got a touchdown week 2. You're getting one of those again. Something like that is going to happen. So if they can buck the trend of the whole season and not do all of those things that they've done every single week, yeah, okay, then maybe they can get the win that sparks the run that turns the season around or whatever. But I have no reason to trust that. The best chance that I think that they have is to incur a Sam Darnold meltdown game by getting a bunch of interior pressure and he throws 4 picks again like he did against the Rams. That has to be the path. That has to be what they go for.
Well, look, if there's a team that you can get right with in that regard, as great as Seattle's offense has been putting points on the board, this has been one of the most turnover-centric offenses in the NFL, too. It hasn't just been that Rams game. Last week was the first game in 5 starts that Sam Darnold did not have at least 1 turnover. They've had issues with skill players fumbling the football, and they actually haven't created very many turnovers on the defensive side of the football. So it feels like kind of a something got to give type situation. But look, anytime you're playing an undrafted rookie quarterback making his first start, like, you have to put the ball in that kid's court. You say, all right, Minnesota, we're not going to let you run the football. We're going to stack the box. We are going to maybe still bracket Justin Jefferson just because we're not going to let the one-man dominator destroy us back there, but we're going to do that. We're going to make it. You have to put the ball in your rookie quarterback's hands, and we're going to see if he can beat us. And if he does, if he manages to make several completions, then kudos to him. Kudos to Kevin O'Connell. But to me, more times than not in that situation, especially against a defense as talented as Seattle that has the guys up front the Seahawks have, like, you can't tell me Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy II and Uchenna Nwosu and those guys are not just frothing at the mouth right now for the chance to be able to get after an undrafted rookie QB that's never started a game. And even some of the guys in the second level, the chance to occasionally mix in the blitzes. So this is that classic, okay, we don't think that you can beat us, QB. You got to prove it that you can do it. We are going to take the running backs out of the picture here. We're going to take your run game out on early downs. We're going to get you in 2nd and 3rd and long. And then we're hoping we can just punish you with our pass rush. And to me, if Seattle is able to do that, this game has a chance to really snowball, because the Seahawks had 4 turnovers against the Texans defense, which I think the Texans might have the best defense in the NFL this year. They still put up 27 points in that game. That's the crazy thing about this offense. Like, they'll turn the ball over several times. We're still going to score 4 touchdowns. Like, they've just been so weird this year in that regard. Feel like the Seahawks will still be able to get those plays on offense, and they'll be able to run the football to complement Sam Darnold so he isn't getting pressured all the time. To me, it's all about what the defense does to Max Brosmer. If the Vikings are going to have a chance to win this game, it's going to be because that curse that they've had for years where backup QBs come in and play the game of their lives comes to play. God, Colt McCoy, man, you want to talk about a guy that if he flies into Seattle, Seahawks fans, like, they're going to be pulling out their crosses, like, get away from me, Colt McCoy. Like, that's just kind of been the way it's been in Seattle.
He's like coaching somewhere now, right?
Donald, coaching change has kind of altered that a little bit. But I think from Seattle's perspective, like, the defense is what wins this game. The offense should be able to put points on the board, but just don't let Brosmer get confident or comfortable at all. Don't let them get the run game going. I don't want to make something sound that simple with an NFL game, but this week, that's what it feels like to me.
You're catching the Vikings in a totally chaotic time. You're walking in on a teenager with a room that needs to be cleaned. It's like you're finding them in a situation that they would rather nobody look at them during. And I feel like, for me, the win-loss of this one, I have no reason to expect to win. All right. Vikings prove me wrong. I have absolutely no reason to expect them to be competitive any more than they've been competitive in the last month. And so for me, the goal has kind of shifted to just, can you figure out anything? Can you find something that's worth building on so that you're not headed into the season going, well, everything is bad, and trying to find reasons not to blow it all up and fire everybody. That's what we're looking for right now, is some kind of foothold to hang on to. And if that means that you only lose 23-34 instead of 7-34, like, that might be the kind of moral victory that we are looking for right now. It is bad, man. Like, look, you get blown out by a division rival. Everybody knows how much that hurts. But considering how much the Vikings really swung at this season and how poorly it has gone, again, like I said before, you got to walk before you can run. So if we're going to get 9 sacks because we have an undrafted rookie in there and he holds the ball too long, whatever. That's fine. That is perfectly on expectation. But what we can't see is kind of what we saw last time, which is quitting the team. And we've seen quitting the team a lot. So if it is a blowout, if it is a snowball game, and in the fourth quarter, if the Vikings are still fighting and just trying to get some pride, it would mean a lot to me. But what we've seen in the past is what we saw in that Lambeau game. There was one special teams gaffe. It was 10-6, right? Anybody's game. One muffed punt turns into touchdown Packers. It's 17-6. And they went 3 and out, interception. And that was the end of the game. The offense totally fell apart after one punch in the mouth, and they couldn't get up off the mat. That's the embarrassing part. Please just don't embarrass me. That's all I ask of the Vikings. Just don't embarrass me.
Hey, Seattle's going to be looking to do what they've done a couple times already at home this year. Last time they played at home against the Cardinals, they were up 28-0 before everybody was in their seats. Like, they're going to be looking to find a way. Can we get one of those fire hydrant starts, so to speak? Let's just get things rolling and end the game early. And Minnesota's going to be looking to do what any underdog does. Can we hang around and then keep fighting and, keep our offense that's maligned? Can we keep them, within striking distance with the way that our defense is playing? Nonetheless, the storyline is still going to be Sam Darnold against his former team.
Always.
And that's what everybody's going to be watching this weekend. We'll see if the Vikings make this a competitive fight, or if the Seahawks come in and say, we're going to impose our will and we're going to win the game the way that people are projecting that we're going to. It's the NFL. You never know what to expect any given Sunday. I'm Corbin Smith for Locked On Seahawks. Make sure to follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. He's Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. You can follow him. I believe, are you only on Blue Sky at this point, or are you still on X as well?
Only Blue Sky at this point, but you can find me on the podcast. You can hit me at Patreon as well at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL.
And make sure Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Vikings fans to check in on Friday episodes as well. We're going to continue diving into this game heading into Sunday. Make sure to enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday with your friends and family. Make it a great one. And thanks for listening in. Go Hawks, go Vikings.